Okay, so we're going to talk about executive resumes today. The biggest thing to know is you have about 7.5 seconds to capture attention. So what we talk about a lot is how to optimize your format for capturing that attention right up top. We're going to go through the executive summary section, how to showcase your profile in terms of professional experience, highlighting your education and training, design and formatting, and then I'm going to give you some tips and tricks on how to optimize for ATS or applicant tracking systems, which is the type of resume you should be using for any online applications. And then again, for a lot of you who are new to working with me, I'm Adriana Cowdin. I've been an executive career coach for over 2 decades, and I founded Be Bold Executive Coaching. I kind of cut my teeth as a C-suite executive, both in Fortune 500 privately held, and then at KKR in terms of private equity. And I did my coaching curriculum through Harvard Business School and really have an expertise in career transition and personal branding, and have been featured in several media publications for that in particular. So I like to start with stats. We talked about the 7.4 seconds you have to capture attention. I think it's also important to note that if you have a professionally written resume, you're 32% more likely to land a job. And that's specifically because those of us who do write resumes, which I do for my clients, this is what we do all day, every day, right? So we know kind of the tricks and tips and techniques to really get it through the door or to get somebody to respond. Some other stats, 63% of recruiters want a resume personalized to the job. And don't worry that you have to personalize the whole resume. What you really want to personalize is your core competency section or your summary section. And you just want to drop in some keywords from that job description. 88% of resumes are rejected if they have a photo. So you definitely don't want a photo. And if you have an unprofessional email address, there's a 76% chance you're going to get ignored. Some examples are like cat mom forever or loves to run at gmail.com. Not that these are bad things, but they're just unprofessional. So try and do something just with your first name, last name, or initials. And then most importantly, you want it to be 2 pages. Recruiters are about 3 times more likely to choose a candidate who sends a 2-page resume. So let's talk about this executive summary section where you want to put in some of that customization. You absolutely want to include numbers. They increase your chance of landing the interview by 40%. And I've been able to write resumes for everyone from a business operations executive and chief of staff to CFO to, chief growth officer. Certainly as CFOs, you've got an abundance of numbers. So size of company, whether it's employee or revenue, size of team that you've led, expenses you've been able to decrease, things like that. You want to include all those facts and figures. When it comes to your executive summary, there are 4 components to really make it be compelling. The first is a clear value proposition, which is a concise statement sharing your unique value and what you bring to the table. And then you want to, again, connect it with that employer's needs. So in this example, I used resourceful and focused operations leader with 15 plus years of experience driving digital transformation and operational excellence in the hospitality and financial services industries. That's great. I know your industries, what you do, and how much experience you have. The next thing you want to do immediately is highlight 2 to 3 key accomplishments that really demonstrate your results. And this is where you want to start kind of seeding in those numbers of quantifiable metrics. So example of that would be increased annual revenue by 40% through strategic digital marketing initiatives. Pretty simple, says what you did. There's always a pretense of kind of a propensity to share what those marketing initiatives were or share more information. Just remember your resume is like essentially a business card. You just want to land the interview. That's when you tell them all the detail. If you give them too much up front, they don't need to talk to you. Your leadership experience, As a senior executive, you need to show that you've been a leader. So talk about the size of teams that you've led. If those teams are smaller, like 5 or 6 people, that's okay too. But I would talk more about the type of team. Definitely include the size, but then the type of team. Performance driven, analytically focused, collaborative, whatever the case may be. It's also very nice to include in there if you have very low turnover, very high retention and loyalty. That speaks a lot to your leadership as well. And lastly, you want to sprinkle in some personal attributes. And this doesn't mean like, lives in Miami and loves margaritas. I mean, that's nice, but it's specifically about your style. I have some people who are very education oriented in their leadership approach. And so they talk about always striving to learn and improve. Other people talk about being a coach as a leader. The things I would stay away from are kind of the topical terms like coach or servant leader. Be very specific and identify what makes you different, unique, and the most effective leader. So I always like to give examples so you can see this in action. So this is a before summary of a client I worked with. And the first thing that stood out to me was no numbers. The second was, if you have this many bullet points, it's way too many, overloading me. Like, tighten it up, give me exactly what I need to know. The third is, I can't figure out what you do for anybody. I don't know, what is a C-suite catalyst? I don't know what kind of expertise you have. And when you look at this detail in here, there's everything from finances to operations to go-to-market strategy. It's kind of everywhere. And the challenge becomes, if you're trying to be everything to everyone, you end up being nothing to anyone. So the more clear and focused you can get, the better your results will be. So we rewrote that. Well, I rewrote this, and this is what it turned into. Chief Growth and Revenue Officer with proven success accelerating top and bottom line performance to expand EBITDA. Managed P&Ls of 500 million, led 700 million to 950 million portcos, instrumental in post-acquisition integration, new market penetration, and leading performance-driven teams in B2B and B2C companies. And then I picked the 3 most relevant examples of his accomplishments specifically to a chief growth or chief revenue officer role. This is where you want to do some of that customization. So if you're applying to a CFO role and like many portcos and PE, they're very focused on EBITDA, make sure one of that is right up here at the top. The second is, if you're going to work for a potential portfolio company and they're very focused on reducing expenses because they're getting ready to make a transaction, then you want to talk about that. You can customize these couple of bullets, but you absolutely want it to be very succinct. The next, and this is how your resume should chronologically go, the order that we're going in, is your professional experience. So first, always go in reverse chronological order. List your work experience starting with the most recent position. And probably one of the things that people struggle with the most is, by the time we're C-suite leaders, we've got decades of experience. So how far do I go back? What do I include? You want to go back the most recent 10 to 15 years. And then I'll show you in an after format of a resume. Everything else goes under a section called additional professional experience. It is not former professional experience or previous. It is additional, because we don't want to kind of lean into some of the age bias that is out there. Next, you want to highlight key achievements. Again, we talked about this. So increased annual revenue by 30% through new market expansion and penetrating new industries. I'm not going to share every market I expanded into. I'm not going to talk about all the industries, because I want you to ask me those questions. I want to land the interview. I'm just going to give you enough of a little bit of taste that you engage. And then, of course, relevant details. So job title, company name, sometimes location, it's not as important anymore. Years of employment. No one has to include months anymore. That's like very old school. Don't put months on your resume. You can take those off. And also important is if the company is not widely known, include a one-line simple description on what the company is about. And then, of course, outline your core responsibilities and the scope of your role, followed by achievements. So this was a person's before experience section. So this was the detail on the company role that he had. And then this was the detail on the actual accomplishments or key results. And again, I'm looking at this and I'm saying, okay, so Verizon and Dish don't jump off because they're kind of mixed in here. And those are big brand names to show that you've had good client experience. I don't know the size of the team. I don't know if you had a P&L. I don't know those facts, figures, accomplishments, and numbers that are going to help you get that interview. So this translated into this. So here I have the company name, the title, the years, go into detailing what you did, the types of locations, US and Canada, and then this becomes very tightened up. What you did was deploy X, in this case, it was an advertising system to reach 30 million subscribers within 24 months. Very succinct, but I'm not telling you how I did it because I want to talk to you. Headed the integration, and now AT&T and Dish kind of pop off the page. Secured board approval for a $50 million project. That tells me the type of finances you're used to dealing with. Spearheaded offerings, and this was for IBM Watson. So much different approach, still clean, still as much information, but much more compelling. This is kind of the trick if you're writing your own resume to do this, is convert everything to an action item. So instead of saying responsible for a team of 10, you change it to lead a team of 10, maintaining X% retention rate during whatever the case may be, global pandemic, work from home transition, etc. Assigned the blank client relationship, you would change to something along the lines of optimize the client experience with X, eliminated pain points and secured, and then you would include the amount of contract renewal, and so on and so forth. You can do this with any type of function that you have. You want to place the emphasis on action. So action verbs is what you want to do there. Education and training, which is really important for all of our resumes. First, your highest degree goes first. And so if you have a PhD or doctorate, even if you're in the middle of your dissertation or still proving your experiment or your thesis, you want to put that up there with your expected graduation date. What you do not want to do is include the graduation year, with the exception of something you have finished very recently, as in the last 18 to 24 months, or you are currently in the progress of. You can remove all of those years. The reason is because ageism again. So many people will look at it and say, oh, this person graduated with their bachelor's in year whatever. I'm going to assume he or she were 22 when they graduated and they're now this old. And unfortunately, we deal with a lot of ageism right now. So we're always looking at how do we make ourselves as equal as possible on this piece of paper. And then relevant certificates and training. This is probably the thing I see missing the most, is I just see your formal education. But most of us have taken ongoing education, particularly as finance executives. You might be a certified financial manager. You might have other certificates. You might have series licenses. There's also management leadership trainings you've probably taken, even if you just took them through a company. Include some of those. It doesn't need to be a list of 40 of them, but if you've taken 5 or 10, I would say include 3 to 5 of those. This is what that would look like. So for this candidate, she has an MBA, concentration in finance and accounting from St. Edward's, and a Bachelor of Finance and Accounting from UTA. She's taken several different types of leadership because she is a heavy finance and accounting person. The ones we selected were ones that were more about being a leader and a coach to people, so that it balances that out on her resume and her credentials. In terms of design and formatting, cohesive standardized structure for every work experience line. Here is the format right here, and you'll get this presentation too, but what you did, how you did it, and the achievement. So led a team of 10 is what, using agile project management is the how, increasing market share by 20% in 6 months is your achievement. The other thing is there's additional sections that will help you set apart from your resume. So publications, awards, community service. We are all very involved, whether it's, a booster club for a kid's high school or in a local, nonprofit that you're energized by, patents that you've been issued, awards you've won, publications. Any of that is really going to go a long way to add to your credibility. We talked again about having a summary that has that hook. Make sure you do that. It also, if you have something like named a top 100 CFO by the Icon Awards, put that up in your summary. Don't just start like award-winning chief financial officer. Put the actual award, start with something like resourceful, but then put the actual award in there and kind of elevate it up, and then include an awards section in your supplemental sections. And please, clean professional design. You definitely want to have ample white space. We're all too old to be reading 9-point font. So use at least 10.5 and lots of white space. So this is an example of a resume that was a before resume. Some of the challenges here are, well, it's actually 3 pages, but I can't get my screen to show all of it. One, it was 3 pages. That was the biggest challenge. Second, all of these highlights, while wonderful because it is showing, finance and figures, kind of are below the fold, if you will, from a marketing term. So they're below that half page. So I'm not being captured in that first 7 or 8 seconds. And there's so many areas of expertise, it's overwhelming. So it really needs to be tightened up. This is the after resume. This particular client loves the color blue and wanted to integrate it. If you want to integrate a color in this kind of basic way, it's always fine. I would just say make it very neutral. But you can see up here, we've got a nice clean heading with what this person does, what his specialty is. This is chock full of results. The core competencies are tied up and cleanly organized into 6. And everything else is nicely organized, and you have plenty of white space, making it very easy to read. The 2-minute trick to personalize your resume is to upload your resume to ChatGPT. Then you want to upload a description of the job or the link to the job and say, this is the role I'm applying to. And then you would use this prompt. Take the job description, highlight 10 key skills or requirements that my resume is missing. Once you've identified those skills or requirements, give me 5 suggestions to incorporate them into the existing summary on my resume. And then please, please, please remember, our brains are better than ChatGPT. So don't just copy and paste. Use yourself, use your actual brain to make some final tweaks. And then again, the applicant tracking system. So if you are applying online, try not to use that LinkedIn Easy Apply because it just scrambles your LinkedIn profile. Instead, actually apply online, but include your LinkedIn as a link. But these applicant tracking systems are completely different. So for example, a summary section, which we just saw on a resume, cannot be more than 40 characters. So there are a lot of tweaks you have to make. Luckily, there are systems that do this for a lot of people and that I recommend. But I think what you want to know is that 98% of the Fortune 500 companies are using that, which means that the smaller and more nimble companies and PE companies have now moved to it because it's been adopted by kind of the bigger groups. And 75% of the resumes are rejected before they ever get to a person. This is, again, why I say, please, please, please focus your energy on networking because that's what's really going to land you the job. But if you have a resume tailored to match that job description's relevant keywords, you have a 40% higher chance of being seen. So if you are going to apply online, optimize for ATS. And here are 3 tools that can do that. I use JobScan a lot for my clients. But what I will tell you is that no matter what you use, verify the resume is accurate. All information is placed kind of under the proper heading, and it's easy to read. It will scrape out intentionally any kind of formatting, any tables. It is a very ugly resume. It is definitely longer than 2 pages. So there is your human resume, and then is your online resume. They don't look anything alike. Your online resume should be keyword stuffed like a turkey, like just shove it full of those keywords, because that's what's going to get you through. And then lastly, we talked a little bit about hiring a professional executive resume writer. The main reasons for these are your impact on your search, right? So professionally written resumes are 32% more likely to land you a job. They usually will give you a 7% increase in salary, and typically you will find a job about 40% faster. And that again is because people who write resumes, I've written over 6,000 of them, right? I do this all day, every day in my life. So I stay aware of everything in the industry, and I work with recruiters and hiring managers a lot. So I know what they're looking for. In terms of cost estimates, people will charge a lot of different things, but you can plan to spend between $500 and $2,000 on a resume, depending on the resume writer's expertise and the level of customization required. There are plenty of services that go beyond that as well. And it typically takes 2 to 4 weeks to go through the process. And that's from, your initial consultation through drafts, revisions, and finalization. If you're interested in talking, we do offer this as a service. I personally write your resumes, and then Claire, of course, makes sure that formatting and grammar and all the things are done well. We've written over 6,000, and it's $1,300 one-time flat rate. In our case, though, I do include your LinkedIn profile and make sure I rewrite that. It's the same amount of time. It takes about 15 to 30 days. Make sure whatever you do, if you hire a resume writer, that you see an example of the after resume, because I would say probably 50% of the time I'm rewriting a resume that somebody already spent well over $1,000 to have done and has not had any success with. And that causes me heartburn. I hate to see that happen for people. Next, I just want to talk about boot camp. So all of you who are job searching, resumes are kind of the beginning. I do a boot camp once every quarter, essentially, and it came out of the operators, the high demand for getting a comprehensive approach to the job search in a short amount of time. So yes, we do dive into resumes and LinkedIn, but we go through interviewing, personal branding, negotiations, revving up recruiters, all the things. Our new boot camp kicks off on October 1st. And it wraps up just before the holiday on November 19th. It is on Tuesdays from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern time. It is a weekly live 2-hour session with me. I spend about an hour on a presentation, and then we do an hour of group coaching and Q&A. And all the sessions are recorded and sent out along with the presentation materials in the event you have to miss one. And that is $4,000. And you do get personalized virtual coaching with me one-on-one, behind the scenes, outside of sessions, to implement what you learn in the boot camp. So again, what we talked about today was your executive summary, showcasing your professional experience, highlighting your education and training, design and formatting, and optimizing for applicant tracking systems. So I am going to stop my share, and let's see. Do we have Claire, you've got questions for me.
I've got questions for you. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing this name correctly. Please feel free to correct me. Anand had a few questions. Let's start with the first one. First one says, should I include a list of keywords at the top of my resume? I think you kind of answered that question. Do you want to answer it directly?
Yeah, you should not. What you want to include are your 6 to maybe 8 core competencies, right? And those should be keywords, but they should not be listed as keywords. It should actually say core competencies. But you do not want to do that cornucopia of keywords that you saw on the before resume, unless you are doing the applicant tracking system, the online ATS resume. Then you do want to do keywords. If you use one of those tools I shared, it will actually show you the direct place to put the keywords and it will tell you specifically which keyword. And the example I always use is if the job search or the job post says executive management, but your keyword on your resume currently says executive leadership, it will actually highlight it and recommend you change it to management so it can go through.
Does that answer your question? I hope so.
It did. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think the second one he had was, my current resume spans around 2.5 pages. Is that too long? What about length?
Yes, absolutely 2 pages. I mean, recruiters and those of us that look at them all the time, if you can't get it into 2 pages, the concern is on the writing. It is not on the experience. So you definitely don't want to go any longer than 2 pages. Conversely, there's no reason to have it be 1.5 pages either. I mean, don't shrink it all the way down, but you want to get it on 2 pages.
Got it. And this last one is interesting. Should each position describe the reason for leaving to the next role? How do you include that? Do you include that?
No, you do not include that with one exception. If you have frequent changes and you were constantly recruited to the next opportunity. So let's say I changed jobs every 18 to 24 to 36 months and I'm consistently recruited away. Every so often, you want to put that you were recruited in the top. So in the description. So for example, recruited to serve as chief financial officer of this company based on exceptional performance at this company. That's it. Otherwise, leave that to the conversation in the interview. Again, the goal is to land the interview. Axel has a hand up.
Yeah, thank you. This is really helpful. Great stuff. We talked about the length. Do you have a suggestion or recommendation in terms of word count? I heard somewhere that someone with, the amount of experience that most of us have, 500 to 600 words should be the maximum, which is really not a lot. I started on my 2 pages with like 1200, I think. And it makes it harder. So I have now a condensed version with 600 words, but it makes it harder to customize it, right? To target it to a certain, because you have less critical mass to play with, right? And include those keywords. So what's your take on that?
Usually the recommendation, if it has to do with keywords, characters, or word count, is specific to an ATS resume. So you'll hear only X amount of keywords, only X amount of word count, only 40 characters. That is all very specific to an online application resume that is an applicant tracking resume. That's it. Not what I call your human resume, which is really where you want to put your energy and effort, and there is no necessarily word count. I mean, again, you don't want 8 and 9 point font to fit it into 2 pages because you have so much, but there's no reason to try and restrict yourself to a word count.
Okay, that helps. Thank you.
Sure.
I'm going to jump in. Bert's a question in. How closely, Adriana, should LinkedIn mirror the resume?
Oh, I love this question. So when it comes to your professional experience, it should be very similar. However, when it comes to your about section, there's a lot more capacity, I would say, you have in LinkedIn. So your LinkedIn about section can have maybe 2 or 3 summary paragraphs about what you are, what you do, who you are, how you do it. And then I would include some key results and then your core competencies. But LinkedIn also has wonderful other sections, media links. It has a whole skills section that, in the bootcamp, we talk about how do you use that? How do you align them? How do you get endorsements? So it should align in that if you have a job on your resume, the job should be on LinkedIn and vice versa, but it does not have to mirror it necessarily. Colin, you have your hand up? Sorry, Claire.
Good.
Yeah, hi. Thank you. This is super helpful. I'm really enjoying this. On the ATS resumes, this is sort of a new concept to me. If you apply to a job online, lots of times you'll go to the website and it'll say just upload resume. And I've always just uploaded my, in-person resume. But I mean, if you're sending one resume to a company and it's potentially going through this ATS system, is that, and you do this alternative format resume, what is the resume that goes to the person that then makes it through and looks at it? I mean, how does that person get the, clean in-person resume?
Human resume. So typically
Yes.
what you do want to upload is your ATS resume, and that's because it's going to scrape it and look for all the details it basically wants. But the beauty is that if you land an interview, most of the time the recruiter will say, send me your resume, or they will look at your LinkedIn profile. The other thing is, it's always smart once you have an interview to send your human resume in PDF only. Please don't ever send an editable version out in PDF to whomever you're meeting with in advance. Because if you remember in the olden days when we used to go to an office and interview, we brought a physical copy of our resume. The more you can make it easier on the interviewer, the better your chances are that they're going to connect with you. And most importantly, read your resume.
All right, that's super helpful. Thanks. One other quick question. I heard from someplace else a recommendation about potentially including references up front versus waiting on the back end when you're hired. Something just like, hey, I have all these people that are willing to speak to my experience and my skills and refer me. Is that something you ever see people include in, squeeze it in their 2-page somewhere? Or is that something you just wait until references are asked for?
So kind of a two-part question. Always wait until your references are asked for. Typically, it reeks of desperation. Like, so many people love me. And then the feedback is like, well, if everyone loves you, why don't you have a job? So it kind of plays against you. There is one caveat, which is if you only have maybe 10 years of experience and your resume is only about 1.5 pages once you have it in the right format, it would be okay to take one of your LinkedIn recommendations, tighten it up to just a snippet and put it on the bottom in italicized small with quotes. That you could include one of those. It's kind of the social proof or a review, right? Like a customer review, but never include like your list of references or even allude to the fact that you have a long list or a credible list.
Great. I haven't done it, but I heard about it and it seemed a little odd to me. So I thought I'd ask the expert, but thank you. Very helpful.
Adriana, Ganesh is asking about, are cover letters relevant? Asking about
Absolutely. They are so relevant. When we send out an email after this, I'll make sure we include a link to our blog on why executives can't afford to skip cover letters. The other thing is, don't ever pay someone to write a cover letter for you. It is a waste of your money and a waste of your time. In that blog, I literally list out exactly how to do it using ChatGPT, because your cover letter should always be customized to the job and to the company. So instead of like racking your brain, I mean, no one on here is a writer of cover letters, like, right? I mean, other than me. So you don't need to sit there and like try and think your CFO brain around how to write the perfect job cover letter. Love AI. Let ChatGPT do it for you. In the blog we send out has all the instructions, but yes, use them.
Yes. Use ChatGPT and then go back and read it one more time.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
Sandeep's asking, what is your view on recent career gap due to layoff?
Okay, so it depends. It's a very customized experience. So for example, if it's in 2024, use your dates on the job to go, year of, let's say it was 2019 through 2024, and don't worry about addressing it on your resume. If it was in 23, you need to address for the fact of what you've been doing for what people are going to see as the last year. So some options are, if you've been consulting, just randomly give your consulting a company name. Doesn't need to be formulated, but let's say it's ALC coaching, right? Just randomly give it a name and then share 2 client examples of what you've been doing and some results. Try and find a number, right? Like either a great company name, a number, built a go-to-market strategy in 6 months, reworked all their financials and reconciled 6 months of books within a 30-day period. Whatever you can come up with for a result. If you have not been consulting, you've just been looking full-time, and it has been since 23, include something like what you have been doing for boards of directors. Have you been advising on a board of director? You could even include like participant, the FANG network, something like that. So it shows that you're actively in the market and you aren't just kind of sitting on your laurels. The only other thing is if you decided after the layoff to take some time off for personal reasons, either you felt like it and you needed a refresh, or maybe you had an ailing parent or child, that is a different scenario, and just reach out to me and I can help you navigate that.
Great.
Sure, that helps. Thank you.
Good.
LinkedIn typically has the start and end date of jobs. Should we remove it? This is
No.
from
You want to keep the start and end date. You want to remove the months, which you can do. Instead of selecting a specific month, the first word in that column or that drop down is the word month. You just pick month, and all it shows then is the year. So again, if it was 2019 to 2023, that's what it would show. When you're creating it, it says month 2019, month 2023. When you save, it just says the years. But yes, you want to include the years.
Thank you.
Got it. I don't see any other questions here in the chat. Feel free to hop on. If anybody else has questions, or pop them in the chat. Oh, I got one from Ganesh. Do you recommend a professional website?
Oh, thank you for asking this, Ganesh. There is very clearly a company or an organization of companies pushing these professional websites right now. Do not spend money on a professional website unless you plan to build a brand for your next phase that is around consulting or speaking. Nobody does this. It is a huge waste of money and time and effort. By the way, by the time you have this website launched and ready, you will probably have already landed a job. But there are just a lot of companies saying this is a great way to do things. It is not. You're never going to get Google results. I mean, by the time, the amount of SEO you would have to do to ever rank, LinkedIn has way outdone all of that, and you're already ranking with your LinkedIn profile. It is such a waste of money. I can't even tell. It literally, as you can tell, it frustrates me that so many people are getting kind of what I feel like is scammed into building these professional websites, and it's not going to further you unless you do want to have like your next step be like keynote speaking or something like that. Matthew? Right. Matthew, I know you're on mute, but you did have.
I was just clapping. I agree with what you were saying there.
Great.
Adriana, another question from Niraj. How do we know which resume will be read by AI versus a person when applying?
Okay, so if you apply online, it's read by AI, plain and simple. Any other way you apply, through an executive recruiter, through an internal recruiter, through a networking reference, if you send it to a human, it is read by a human. If you send it to a computer, it is read by a computer. And what I always say is people hire people, not computers.
Yep, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else?
It looks like the question just popped in from Arthur.
From Arthur. How do you recommend we find
Board of director opportunities? Yeah. So a couple things. First of all, there is, for women executives, there's a group called Onboard that is specific for placing women on boards. The second is if you have been, this might be what John is saying, if you have been a CFO in a public company, you may have had access to the board. Reach out to those board members and see if you can negotiate your way onto another board. There are organizations that just do board placement, but not that I would say join them, but what they're really good at doing is helping you formulate your pitch to be a board of directors member. The easiest way to start is to find a nonprofit you love that you are super passionate about, reach out to them, their executive director or CEO, and say, hey, I would love to get more involved. I have a ton of experience as a CFO that I'd be happy to leverage for you. Love to talk about serving on your board. Most of them are dying for financial people. They would be more than happy to have you.
Next question. Do you recommend a goodness of fit format for the cover letters?
I I'm not, I think I would need you to elaborate on what a goodness of fit format is.
Yeah, yeah. Basically, you highlight the key requirement, but not everything. The top 5 and how I match up, so that it's like probably a table format, but not listing the 20 things, just the top 4 or 5. Yeah.
Thank you. I do not recommend that. What I recommend is starting with something very unique. For example, very excited about your opportunity for, US director of whatever, and notice that recently you've leveraged a lot of your assets in the international market. Would that be a reason that you're looking to pivot back to the United States? Or I noticed in your newest financial report, X, Y, and Z, and it inspired me to inquire about this opportunity. Specifically, it looks like you focus on 1, 2, 3, 4, and those are skills I bring to bear. And here are 2 or 3 things I've done specific to it. The format of, I think you just said goodness match format, that was very popular probably in like the mid to late 90s and beginning of 2000s. Now it's more about being clear and concise in more paragraph kind of style, but more than anything, it's praising the company, conveying that, yes, you have the skill sets, but you have spent time researching my company and my role and why you would be a good fit.
Yeah, thank
Always
you.
start with a compliment.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
See. From John, how important is LinkedIn in your search? How should we use LinkedIn in a search?
Hugely important. Cannot stress it enough. So 80% of jobs are landed through networking, 90% when you're a senior executive. And the beauty of LinkedIn is we can still stay connected to people we worked with decades ago. The other thing is that if I'm an executive recruiter and I'm looking to place a CFO at company XYZ, there are several ways I can search on the recruiter function of LinkedIn. Not only are they geographic and title and keyword, but many of them search based on their connections. So I look at my first, second, or third, or someone who's connected. So it's not just about who you one-on-one connect with, but how far those connections can extend for you. The other thing, and we spent an entire session in boot camp on this, we go through like the golden 411 rule on LinkedIn, which is for every 4 pieces of content should be shared. So for every 1 piece of content you share about yourself, you should share 4 from somebody else. That makes the one perfect profile. So you need to be posting 3 to 5 times a week. It increases your search volume by about 60%. And the first thing people say is like, first of all, I don't have time to do that. I don't know how to think of all that. Well, think about out of 5, you only need to come up with 1 creative one. The other 4 should be a share with a repost, a share with a thought, an accent in a poll. It should be resharing other content. And it doesn't have to be native to LinkedIn. You might be sharing an article from HBR, for example, or the Financial Times or Wall Street Journal. So post 3 to 5 times per week, use the 411 rule, and absolutely, absolutely use your LinkedIn network. Hugely critical.
Great. If you have left your previous role, but have not found a new position yet, do you recommend updating LinkedIn accordingly, or should you wait until you've landed the new role?
It really depends, actually. It depends on a couple things. One, if you left the role and you're technically still on the payroll, totally fine to leave it as looking like a present, existing role. And that happens, you might be getting paid out through your severance as a W-2, might be on continued benefits. If you left the role maybe 6 months ago and you've been looking, I would update it with something like I talked about with your resume. And that's more because they're going to immediately ask you about that existing role, and it's going to make for a very uncomfortable first 30 to 60 seconds in your interview, and it could take it down the wrong path, which we want to avoid. The other thing would be if you are very well connected to people at your last company, and a lot of you are moving around, it does make sense to update it just to show that you've completed that role. But if you're looking for 3 months, or you're just landing, it's fine to leave it as present.
Perfect. Stan asked, send resumes through job sites or company career sections, which is better?
There's not, honestly, they're not all that different. And that's because many of the companies, if it had, let's say a job for Salesforce is posted on LinkedIn, it's actually going to connect it into Salesforce's back end. The other thing is a lot of the companies where you find a job board are connected to Workaday, and Workaday is the platform that the company is actually using. So in many times it's one and the same, if you will. Either way, you're still applying to the system. So please use your online ATS resume, and please, please, please only have that be 10% of your time and energy.
Perfect. Ganesh asks another question. What are your views on the open to work green badge on LinkedIn?
Oh, thank you for asking. Please don't use this. Please, please, please don't use this. Use the feature. So if you have open to work on there, you can restrict it. No badge, but you can use it where recruiters can see you're open to work and ready and available. But do not use the badge. Don't post on LinkedIn in your headline, actively seeking new opportunity. Please don't do one of these LinkedIn posts. I think I did a post on it recently. Like, I'm looking for new opportunities. Here's everything I bring. Here's everything I'm looking for. Please spread the word. I kind of associate it with like when you want to have an amazing experience somewhere, do you go to someplace that is like blasting the world with how fantastic it is? Or do you hear about like, oh my God, the best steakhouse in town in Chicago is STK or Steak 48, that's where you have to go, where you maybe aren't hearing about it all the time, but those in the know. You don't want to be the one blasting your stuff out in, like mass format. If you want to do a one-to-many, which I think is great because it's more effective, be a guest on a podcast, get picked up in a media article or feature, host your own webinar about the basics of business finance for managers. I mean, remember that you're executives, you have a ton of useful knowledge, leverage it, get yourself out there. All it's going to do is build your personal brand and attract more attention, which is what you need.
Good. Anything else? Other questions?
John's got his hand raised. Go ahead, John. I think you're on mute.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, got it. Yeah, so did you say the open to work, it's okay to use it to the recruiters where recruiters can see it only?
Not the banner, but there is a way to use the function of open to work where you restrict it to recruiters. It's
Right.
not the banner, but it is the open to work function.
Yeah, so, okay, got it.
Yeah. But no, don't use the banner.
On your profile, I mean, don't use
Right.
it. Right.
Yeah. Oh, and Joyce provided a way for you to already get some expertise going. You can write an article for the Financial Executives Journal. That's a great way to get reach. I mean, at the end of the day, it's about personal branding, right? Who are you? What are you known for? How are you different? What I always say to my clients is like, let's figure out what makes you a unicorn and makes you the only one of the kind that they desperately need to hire you. And it comes back in spades. So I had a client who had been searching for over 6 months. She was a CMO and she had come out of privately owned and PE-backed companies and was like, I'm not ready for that. I want a bigger company again. My history was these big firms. And I was like, okay, well, let's really dig into your brand. And as we did that, we found a great opportunity for her. And she was like, they want me to relocate. I said, don't worry about any of that. Keep yourself open. They want you. Sure enough, they wanted her. 33% increase in her salary I negotiated, 10% bump in her bonus, a nice healthy sign-on, and we got delayed relocation for 3 years, which is what she needed to get her kid through school. So, when you are clear on what you want, you become extremely confident, and that confidence is attractive and they pay for it. That's the value you bring. You know, you're this confident financial executive. You better know how to negotiate. You're running the company's finances, right? So you should know how to negotiate a good offer, but you have to know how to present your value. That is very foreign to people. I know, at least me, I wasn't taught to like put myself out there, like, here's all the amazing things about me. And so, I mean, there is an art to personal branding where you can share your confidence in an authentic way and still become that unicorn, so that company A, B, or C is like, I absolutely cannot live without this person. And I will be happy to pay them what they want, or work around their relocation situation or their schedule, or whatever the case may be. Well, thank you so much for everyone attending today. I really appreciate your time. And